Hello everybody and welcome back to Juno New Origins, where I think we need to give up on lifting both of these simultaneously. I think it's just not worth it. So we are going to get rid of this one, and we're going to lift the heavier one for now. So something along the lines of this. That will allow us to bring back our fairing by quite a lot, which will save us a lot of weight. So that'll put us at a fairing of like 3 meters. Maybe slightly larger than that, like 3.5 meters. Yeah, something about like that. So that saves us an awful lot of weight there. Now, the main issue that I'm having right now is I still don't understand why we're not seeing proper fuel transfer here. But we can force it. I don't know why we have to, but we can force it. So that is reasonably fine. And if we need more off the pad thrust, we can do that. But I think just dropping this mass will probably help. We're still going to be very net negative here, and I want to see by how much this is over or underkill at this point. So let's go ahead and put this out on the pad. Actually, I should restart this because we're not doing proper fuel transfer. Okay, so we need to grab all of these out here. We need to say that this is transferring in, and all of these are transferring out. Like so. So that's 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. I don't know why this isn't working to do it at build time, but whatever. Maybe we'll have to revisit this and build this anew from scratch. That might be a possibility. In fact, it may not be a bad idea. This thing is, at this point, pretty absurd, and we might be able to get some decent cost savings if we were to do that. So, of course, we're doing the fuel depot core here. We dropped the space lab from this design. And I did want to have this heading be at 60. There we go. So our current thrust to weight is not terrible, that's for sure. The SRBs are helping lift us up through here. But I am thinking that maybe a significantly smaller launcher might do the trick. We'll see what we've got here. So currently we're at a 20-kilometer apoapsis. I want to drop this over to 70. We do have our monoprop running, and we don't really need that. RCS can be turned off. And note how this is still at 83% here. Our fuel crossfeed is not draining appropriately. In fact, I'm not 100% convinced. Well, it is draining kind of appropriately. It's not draining quickly enough to feed these engines. So that is definitely a concern, but we will have some remaining fuel there. So at this point, our apoapsis is looking pretty good. I'm going to take us down to a 5-degree pitch, and the next step would be to drop this fairing, and I think we can probably get away with doing that now, which is what I'm going to do. So we're going to get away with doing that, hopefully. And our thrust to weight is just going to continue to push up here. I want to put us at 0-degree pitch, and let's hop into orbital velocity. So we can see we've got about 2 kilometers per second left in this stage, apparently. Okay. So we're just going to keep burning here until an apoapsis of about 100 kilometers, which will probably happen after these boosters run out of fuel, right? Yeah, definitely will. Okay, so the boosters are out of fuel. Get rid of them. Now we're in the main engine here. And this is better for sure. I think we can do a significantly better job if we rebuild this from the ground up, though. That's what I'm thinking right now. This will get to orbit, but at what cost, right? This is extraordinarily expensive, and I think that we should probably just scrap this design for right now and start again. So I'm going to take from here, and I'm just going to get rid of it. So this is just the fairing, the controller core, and the payload. Then we're going to plop in a fuel tank here. Okay, so fuel tank like that. I'm going to make this be about maybe like 8 meters long. And then in terms of the vacuum engines, we probably would want to run Spirit engines, ideally, like 4 of them. This is very, very tiny at this moment, and we would like to boost up the size of that for sure. Okay, so this is currently a nozzle throat size of 50%, which is probably good. In our vacuum, we can see that our DV is 1.65 kilometers per second. Our thrust to weight is incredibly, incredibly small, and this is going to take 8 hours to burn. We obviously don't want to do that, but I'm wondering, our specific impulse is showing up as not applicable. Why? Well, it's showing up here, so I guess that's fine. 205 seconds, and it looks like that is indeed optimal. Now, this is currently monoprop, and I want to change this over to being liquid, but probably pressure-fed, like this. So that's 291 seconds, and that's much better. So the nozzle length here, you can see that definitely is going to change our ISP there. That is absolutely fine. We're currently pressure-fed and Carolox, so that is looking good. And then we're in bell or cone nozzle. Bell is the way to go. So if we were to put that there, and then have there be some 4 of them, like this. They're clipping together, and I don't love that. If we do it like this, they're not clipping together, but they're going to be a little wider than what we're targeting for here. So that is understood. What would it look like if we put an inner stage here? Well, we'd have to move that inner stage down to about there and have it widen out like that. Okay. So this is now showing as 820 meters per second, but still a 33-minute burn time. So I think these are not the engines to go with here. They're just not powerful enough. And that's not shocking considering what we've got here. So I think we're going to have to go... Man, I really don't like these options. What if we just eliminate that stage? And we just go for something kind of like this, right? So something like that. This is now 1.1 million, and then we can put some mage engines as takeoff engines down here. We can do the same sort of quad engine design. So that would be something kind of like this, right? And then we would need to boost up the size of these, most likely. And the throat size, we're probably going to want to, well, I'd like to bring this down to about here, altitude of 0. And the nozzle throat size should be probably maximized. Now, we are running gas generators rather than pressure-fed. So pressure-fed is going to be better for vacuum operations. We don't really want to do that for right now. So we're going to go with gas generators. That seems fine. We're on a cone nozzle, but a Bravo nozzle would be higher specific impulse, so that's what we're going to go with here. And then as far as the rocket size, or the rocket engine size, we'd like to move these up to be, I don't know, maybe like 200% in size, something like that. Okay, so that puts us at just over 1 thrust to weight, and this is only 40 million. So we're already doing pretty well there. Now, we could put on a pair of side boosters. And we have a couple of options on that. I'm not sure if I want these to be... We'll put it there. I'm not sure if I want this to be liquid or solid yet. I'm just thinking about the overall delta V on this. Because remember, this has to deliver us, as it is right now, all the way to the station. Because we don't have a maneuvering stage up here. We maybe could add one, but it would add significant cost. I'd like to avoid it if possible. So let's put in this guy here and just crank it up to around a 2-ish meter radius. There we go. And then we can raise this up to be about here and then about here. Slap in a hemisphere up top. Make sure that that has fuel in it. There we go. And then, do we want this to be solid rocket motors? Well, maybe. We'll put in some Ifrit boosters here, or an Ifrit booster for now. And that should definitely be a nozzle length of about 40%. Yeah. About 40% for operation at the bottom here. So that looks decent. The nozzle throat size should absolutely be increased. There we go. And then the size of this could be brought up a lot. So it'd be something kind of like that, right? And then we would have another tank that would go down here. So that would be right here. That is not the way I wanted that to be applied. Let's get rid of that. Another tank there. We would size that down a bit and then size it down like this. That's not the exact size I want it to be, but there we go. That makes it be the correct size. Okay, so now what we would do is we would, of course, do radial symmetry like this. So if this lifts off, this is 1.89 thrust to weight. But I'm assuming this is burning all engines at once. Actually, this is only burning the SRBs. Okay, that's fascinating. We've got an empty stage here, an empty stage here. We're going to need another stage, an empty one, and that's going to be down this direction. So that is going to be dropping this and maybe firing these engines at that time. Then the fairing, then the fuel depot core. Now, I'm not convinced that this gets us where we want to go. This is apparently only 3 kilometers per second. Let's give this a quick test to see how this goes. 73 million, and the launch pad is still 41 million, but this is going to be a little bit better than what we had previously in terms of the overall cost. I say a little bit. It's a lot better. There's a significantly cost cut. It's not cost cut enough yet, but I want to see what our thrust to weight ends up looking like. We can also increase our number of solid rocket motors here. So that's a theoretical option. For now, all we're doing is we're just going straight up on the solid rocket motors and using them to deliver us into, well, we're going to build up some amount of speed. The question is how much? And then what's our thrust to weight going to be once we swap over? We have a lot of questions right now. Our thrust to weight is dropping over the course of this. Noted. So that's definitely not ideal. We are spending... We need to change the cycling on that, for sure. Okay. So thrust to weight here is about 1.2. So our thrust to weight is definitely too low to pull this off. And this is 2.18 kilometers per second. Okay. So let's pull this back and we can make a few alterations to this. Alteration number 1. I actually wanted to undo an exit. There we go. Alteration number 1. I want to change the ramping cycle on these to be, instead of being ramped down, I would like it to be probably just basic here. So that will help matters. We could also increase the number of these. That will cut into our expenses. No doubt about that. I wouldn't mind necessarily detaching this fuel tank, dropping that down to be about 35 meters instead of 40. And that will boost how far this takes us as well. That'll cut our costs a little bit here, but also here. So we can see that now we're still going to be losing about 10 million on this. There's probably a better way to do this, right? How much are we paying for each of these engines? There's about 10 million per engine. So these engines are the vast majority of this. Do you suppose that there's a way to put a single Mage engine on here, have this be pressure fed, bump the size way, way up, like so, set the nozzle length to maximum, and have this be optimized for vacuum here. So this is currently 274. So we can put the throat size way, way down here. It's a very, very low thrust to weight, right? This would be maximizing our thrust. So 0.04 would be that ending thrust to weight, which is not amazing. But what I'm thinking is maybe we can accelerate up enough on SRBs. That might be an interesting way to go about it. So we don't necessarily want to be on a cone nozzle, I don't think. Yeah, bell nozzle is a bit more efficient here. So it would be something like this. But what if we significantly dropped this as well? This is going to be kind of weird looking. We made this be about a 15-meter situation here, like that, right? So that's going to have like 1.07 hours of burn time. And I'm not convinced that that's exactly what we want here. We'll revisit this. But this is actually quite cheap. We could make this be quad fairly easily. So radial quad, something kind of like that. These are clipping in awkwardly. I'd like to get them positioned maybe a bit more like this, so that they're clipping in maybe a bit less. Yeah, about like that. And then I'd like to move them inward a slight amount. Yeah, about like that. So that puts our price at 33.7. Then we can come here, and we can do radial X4, and we can lift this like so. Now, this is going to be a lot of thrust to weight. This is probably too much thrust to weight off of the pad, but look at this. We're going to be losing, well, similar amounts. We're still going to be losing about 10 million here. So we could maybe dial these back some. That's probably what will end up happening. For now, I want to see how this goes. Okay, so we're going to set this to 60, and we're going to put this at about 60. Actually, we're not. We're going to put this at 100, or rather 90. Okay, off we go. So we've got that ramp up. And we're just going to punch up through the atmosphere quite a lot. We're not activating these engines as of yet. And I think our thrust to weight is going to be way too high here. Yeah, our thrust to weight is quite high. No doubt about that. Our burn rate on this is pretty high as well. We're losing a lot to drag. So if we wanted to try to move this over, right, we would have a very hard time doing that. So at this point, we have a lot of altitude, and we don't have any, like, gimbaling. So that's certainly a concern. These engines are not activated right now. The fairing would go with. That's fine. Okay, so we do something like this, right? But our overall thrust to weight is 0.12. So our thrust to weight at this point is a significant issue. We have 1.33 kilometers per second here. So that is understood. This is not enough to get into orbit, but it's an interesting thought experiment anyway. But I don't think that's the way to go. I really, really don't. This is a very, very heavy payload, though, and experimentation is relatively fine. So let's bring this back down to where we had it before, which was there. Okay, so this is where we had it previously. This is an interesting layout for sure. I would be interested in reducing our nozzle throat size here to lift this up at around, to lift it optimally at around like 30 kilometers. Which would actually be a nozzle throat size of 0, would be the optimum there. Okay. So this is 73.3 million, and this is 39.7 million. So we're definitely looking at about 3 million overspend here, and this isn't going to get to orbit. So this is going to be, the financial constraints are quite a concern at this moment, because there's a large weight constraint as well, right? If we were to just do this, that increases our price to 105, And that increases our launch fee to 55.8. So we're now looking at a 60 million loss just by doing that. So that's definitely noted. We might want to consider a more conventional rocket. So that would be a second stage up here. And the main problem with that is we have a lack of engines that can easily be made into like high power vacuum optimized engines. That's the issue right now. So we've got like more power here. So the Omega nozzle and Apex engine. So this would be the way that we would lift off, I think. That also gives us access to the gas generator too. But we kind of want the opposite as of right now. So what we want is... Let's see, that's going up with the rocket engine size. Large nozzle made for solid rocket boosters. That might be useful. And that gives us the access to the Phoenix solid rocket motor. That might be a good thing to grab here. Let's grab it. And now we'll go back in here. That'll give us access to a different solid rocket motor, right? So we can put this back now, and we can get rid of the Ifrit solid rocket motor, and we would instead put in the Phoenix solid rocket motor. So that would go there like that, hypothetically. But the actual size of this will be somewhat different. So the nozzle throat size here should be maximized. And the size could also be maximized. So that's going to massively increase the cost here, right? But we can ditch this. Actually, we probably shouldn't, now that I look at the size differential there. We would just attach this here, and then attach it here, like that. Okay, so something along the lines of this. That'll boost up the power here a lot. So this is in the Echo nozzle. Power cycle is booster, fuel grain is basic. So we can also do the ramp up. Or steady. I kind of want to see what it feels like on steady. Okay, so let's see how that goes. So this is going to be just these Phoenix solid boosters, and then we're going to fire the Mage engines partway up here, and then the fairing, and then the fuel depot core. I don't expect we're going to get to the station here, to be clear, and we have got some cost overruns here, for sure. No doubt about all of that, but I want to see how this flies. Okay. Interesting. So we're definitely plowing through the solid fuel. The main thing here is this is only 100 million. I think we're going to have to lose money on specifically this mission, and the next mission we can actually make some money on. Maybe we can make it back. That would be nice. But I want to see how far this propels us. Okay. So that put us at about... we're moving pretty good here. Now, to be clear, I don't necessarily think that this is going to get into orbit. I really, really doubt it. Let's take a look at the DV. Yeah, it's not going to get us into orbit, that's for sure. We don't have enough Delta V to do that, but it's an interesting start for sure. Those engines will be helpful. No doubt about it. Okay. So let's just let this coast for a little bit here. We're at 30 kilometers right now. Our overall apoapsis is 56. So that seems fine. Let's take this down to 15 degree pitch. Our main issue right now still remains that our vacuum optimized engines are very inefficient in terms of like finances to thrust to weight. That's the main problem at this moment. So we've got about 50% fuel left here. And like I said, I think we're probably going to have to lose some amount of money on the lab just because it's so much weight. I don't know that there's a great way, at least with the tech that we have, I don't know that there's a great way to do this for 100 million. Like, in terms of real world, that's basically the cost of a Falcon 9 flight, and I'm pretty sure that a Falcon 9 can't carry 500 tons. I don't know that off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure. So obviously we're about to run out of fuel here, and we can see that we accelerated up to somewhere, and we can ditch the staging, or the fairing, I should say, somewhere around 2 kilometers per second. If I had gotten rid of the fairing a little earlier, we would have gotten slightly further, but that is definitely not as far as I would have liked it to go. We'll put it that way. So, we do have a couple of options. We could just say, you know what? We're not going to worry even the slightest about the money and do something like this. That'll help matters significantly. This is now going to be, you know, 170 million, so we'll be losing like 70 million on this. Let's see how this flies, but I'm not expecting it to go that much better. I mean, we're going to propel further off of our SRBs, for sure. 100%. We're going to get a lot of verticality out of them. And that's nice, don't get me wrong. But I think we're going to have to fundamentally rethink how we're trying to deliver this if we want to do it within budget. And that's something I need to give some real solid thought to. How do I want to pull that off? That'll be very interesting indeed. Okay. So we would do something kind of like this, right? We've got an apoapsis of 106 kilometers as it is. We're punching up through the atmosphere very, very quickly at this point, but we had very little horizontal speed that we got out of that. So we can see our vertical velocity is dropping. We can ditch our fairing probably about now-ish, which I'm going to do. And we don't need to have this monoprop on. Okay, so, I mean, our orbital velocity is going up now. This is still going to be pretty problematic. So we need to have some sort of steering capacity for this, and yeah, I think we just need to fundamentally rethink how we are doing this to get it in within budget. That's going to be very interesting. Especially considering for this, the launch cost alone is like 56% of our budget. So we clearly need to get that a lot lighter, right? Out of curiosity, what is it for just putting this on the pad? So basically like this. What is it for that? Just that is 9 million. Just to put it on the pad. Okay. We could try to launch it from a different location. But I don't think there's a viable location, really, looking at the sizes. So, yeah, I think we're just going to have to fundamentally rethink this. I'm going to see what I can come up with in between episodes, and that'll be interesting. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including ALS Gamer, Atala, Andy McGar, Ali Lee, Dark Horse Xenocyte, Hiro Marutsu, Upper Cumberland Gamers, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, The Lounge STL, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time.